What up, Raffalitos? Welcome back to my channel. Today, let's talk about Russia. Let's talk about the global impact of Russia on Guyana. Stay tuned.
Oh, this is my day. I'm ready to take it on, come what may.
So Russians have been operating in Guyana for decades. And back in 1988, around the late 80s, the Russians built a huge embassy in Georgetown. And in response, the Americans built a huge embassy of their own. And so back then we thought that this meant that Guyana was going to become a very important geopolitical player because of the interest of the Russians and the Americans. And so it's about 20, 30 years later, and we're beginning to see what that impact has evolved in. Russia has invested in a company called RUSAL, right? It's a Russian bauxite company that operates in Guyana, took over from the National Bauxite Company, and they now operate the major bauxite, that is the ore used to produce aluminum in Guyana. But recently, there have been difficulties, unrest in the company RUSAL, where workers have struck. They went on strike to secure better wages and better better working conditions and better benefits. But the Russian company RUSAL refused to recognize the union. And so there was a standoff for several weeks. The workers blockaded the river that is used to transport the products from RUSAL. And so there was a standoff for several weeks. Now the National Workers Union stepped in and the government stepped in after many weeks. And now they've managed to reach a resolution where RUSAL has decided to recognize the union. But the question is, what is the impact of Russia on Guyana? What is Russia's global impact on Guyana? Who are the Russians in Guyana? What are they doing? What industries are they operating in? And how are they impacting our national economy? So that's the Russian embassy. When it opened about 25 years ago, it was the biggest embassy in South America. So let's talk Russia. So the Russian economy is a $1.579 trillion economy, and it has a purchasing power of $4 trillion. It is ranked 11th in the world, and by purchasing power is ranked 6th in the world. It has the largest land mass in the world. It is a nuclear power. It has had military intervention in Afghanistan and currently is involved in Syria. The Russian Air Force rivals the US Air Force. They launch spacecrafts and carry astronauts and cosmonauts to the International Space Station. Russian scientists, including physicists, rival the West. And I've actually worked with Russian physicists at a major national laboratory in the US. So I've had a lot of close contact with Russians when I lived in the US. And some of my best clubbing friends and clubbing associates were Russian girls. You know, shout out to Yulia and Anna. We used to go clubbing in Manhattan on a regular basis. You know, places like Webster Hall, Nivin's, and this Russian joint on 55th Street. So I know Russians, and so this is not a bashing of Russia, right? I have very close friends in Russia. Now you can find information at the Russian Embassy website in Guyana, and that's online. Anybody can find that. You'll find that the ambassador is Alexander Kurmaz, that Russia established diplomatic relations with Guyana in 1970. They canceled more than $16 million in debt, national debt. They established visa-free travel for Russians, that Guyana now allows Russians to travel without visas to Guyana, and this is reciprocal. RUSAL is the largest Russian company in Guyana. They operate in bauxite. They started operating in 2004. They're a joint venture between Guyana state-owned bauxite company BCGI, and they have paid $10.8 million in corporate tax and $1.3 million in royalty and over $3 million in NIS payments since they established. They also help school children, and they pay teachers in Kwakwani and give scholarships to study in Russia. Now that's the story from the Russian embassy standpoint. Here's a look at the headquarters of RUSAL in Georgetown. This is during a period when there was a strike. And we're going to have to look somewhere else to get the other side of this story. So we'll go to Wikipedia. The problem is that they have a huge wealth gap. And because of the breakup of the Soviet Union, it produced what are called oligarchs and tycoons. The oligarchs are the ones who benefited from the privatization of state assets. They were basically given to friends and family of the government. And the tycoons were the ones who took advantage of the disparity between the East and the West. The name Oleg Deripaska pops up on the grid when you do a search for RUSAL, and he owns 50% of the company. Mr. Deripaska is, in fact, a tycoon, a Russian tycoon. And he was able to consolidate the metals industry, aluminum, with this guy, Roman Abramovich. He was another tycoon, a Russian oligarch or tycoon. And these guys amassed a lot of money by simply starting out trading small companies in Russia in the metals industry, and then building and growing, consolidating the companies. Now they own mining companies on 4 continents, including Africa and Asia and South America and in Europe. And so Deripaska is connected to Paul Manafort. So Deripaska is suing the American government, the US government, for calling him an oligarch, when in fact he's a tycoon. And he's connected to the collusion case, Russia collusion case against Mr. Trump because of his connection to Paul Manafort. Now these guys are billionaires. Right now, I think, according to Wikipedia, Deripaska is worth about $3 billion US dollars, which is a decline from his initial worth of about 7 or 8 billion. And Abramovich is worth about 11 billion. And Manafort is in fact been sued by Robert Mueller, and that is how Deripaska, by his connection with Manafort, got caught up in this whole investigation of Russian interference with elections. And he's now under some kind of sanctions and is suing the government to remove these sanctions, as the US government to remove these sanctions and to clear his name, you know, being accused of being a Russian oligarch. The point I'm making here is that the impact of Russia globally is not necessarily through the government of Russia, through President Putin and, you know, his foreign policy. The impact of Russia in places like Guyana is more likely to be through the oligarchs and tycoons like Mr. Deripaska, who owns 50% of RUSAL. And so the global impact that we experience is likely to be the impact of very wealthy Russians, billionaires, who got wealthy after the breakup of the Soviet Union and who were able to grow and expand their wealth across the globe by acquiring companies, usually companies in the mining sector, because that is what Russia is known for. You know, 16% of Russian GDP comes from oil and gas and mining. So this is what we're looking at in Guyana. RUSAL connected to Deripaska, and Deripaska is in fact behind a lot of the policies, a lot of, in other words, he is fully aware of what RUSAL is doing in Guyana. He's 50% shareholder, and a number of other companies, including a few US companies, are also shareholders in this RUSAL company. Guyana, I think, owns about 3% of the company. So the other 97% is owned by Russian and other companies around the world. So this is the situation we find ourselves in. So guys, those are my thoughts on Russia. Tell me what you think about the Russian impact of Russia on Guyana. Leave a comment below. And if you like this video, leave a thumbs up. And share this video and this channel with friends and family around the world. Remember, very soon you're going to have a chance to support this channel by purchasing merchandise from Raffle Vlogs, from Raffleitos, from Raffle Nation, from this channel. And you'll be able to support, you'll be able to show in years to come that you invested in this channel when it was only 2,000 subscribers, when it only had 2,000 subscribers. And so you'll be able to say you knew Raffle from the beginning when this channel reaches 1 million subscribers. And that will happen very soon. So I'll be producing limited editions, a limited number of merchandise, mugs and t-shirts with the channel's logo, and those will be available online very shortly. So look out for them in an online store very soon. And later!